Hello, hello, everyone. Happy Friday. Well, we did it. We made it through another week. And now it's time for Happy Hour. Happy Hour is a stream I do on Fridays at 5 p.m. Eastern Time where we watch a woke training from start to finish. We watch the boring bits, we watch the cringy bits. And the reason we watch it from start to finish is so that we can see the woke left in their habitat, in their natural existence, when they don't really think that people like us are going to be watching them. And I want to hear the full context of what they are saying so that we're not misunderstanding things. We're not trying to own them. Like if you're just cutting a clip out on the internet, stuff like that. We're watching we're watching all of it from start to finish. We're letting them say what they want to say, and if they convince us to come over to their team, well, I guess that's the way it goes. But most of the time, they just reveal themselves for how crazy they are and how really dangerous they are, much more than the average people think. In fact, I am absolutely convinced that people who watch Happy Hour with me on a regular basis know more about what the woke left is doing than like anyone else, which is kind of scary if you think about it. You know more than the commentators, you know more than the journalists, you know more than the bougie academics who want to pontificate and intellectualize about the woke problem for years and years and years on the intellectual dark web, having all these fancy highfalutin conversations as they drink their whiskey. You know more than all of those people. And I'm not joking about that, because we actually watch them and we listen to them and we believe them when they tell us what they're going to do, because they always tell us what exactly they're going to do. Now, guys, in continuing with, well, I don't know. I think that some of you were here last night. Probably many of you were here last night when we did Spy Stream to go inside autistic sex education with our new friend Dylan. Dylan and I are going to be in each other's lives. Dylan sent out another email about me today. Like, actually named me. And Dylan, I got to thank you for like promoting my stuff, man. That was really great of you. So we went inside autistic sex education. The story is on my Substack right now. I made, guys, this is what I do for you. This is how much I love you guys. I was up until 4 a.m. making 17 different effing clips of that spy stream and making sure I had everything written up and ready to go and ready to put on the internet for this morning so it could get out and people could see what really happened in a much more digestible way than sitting through the entire training. So you can view that right now on my Substack, which is karlyn.substack.com. I am challenging myself this month to get 100 new paying subscribers on my Substack. I'm posting content I think pretty much every single day on my Substack, whether it's a podcast or it's an article or it's a new piece in my Woke Mind series or it's an expose like with Inside Autistic Sex Education. I'm posting new stuff almost every single day. And I, not to pat myself on the back too much, I think I'm doing some of the most original Unwoke content on the internet right now. I really do. I'm focused, I'm honed in, I'm in a really good place with it. We're going to be putting a lot more stories out, just like last night. And if you would like to support the work I'm doing, becoming a paid subscriber on my Substack for $5 a month would be really, really amazing. I want to hit 100 new paid subscribers this month. I'm actually almost 50% to my goal. So we had a good day. Like I'm almost 50% of the way there. I'm really excited about it. We are absolutely on track to meet that goal by the end of the month. And if we can meet that goal, then I'm going to keep the whole site free for everyone. And if we don't meet that goal, I'm going to have to put up a paywall on some of my articles because they're just economic realities to the situation. And if I'm spending my time doing this, if I'm staying up literally all night to make clips of these things, to make sure that everyone can distribute them across the internet and we can expose these people, time is money, man. I'm sorry. I got to be able to pay my mortgage somehow. And so that's just the way it goes. But I really would like to keep it free for everyone. If you are able to give financially, please do so. You don't have to just do it on my Substack. I'll give you a couple other options in a second. But if you're not able to give financially, because I know that times are tough for a lot of people, I literally just got back from the grocery store myself like 15 minutes ago. So believe me, I know times are tough. If you can't support me financially, it's cool, man. Share my stuff. Get it out there. post it on your social media, share it with your friends and family, share it with your community. That goes for videos, that goes for articles, that goes for podcasts. That is honestly the very best way you guys can help me out, is by sharing my content, because it's not always easy to get over the quarantines that social media puts you in. And so I rely on you guys to help out with that, and I do appreciate it. But continuing in this vein of trans activism, today we are going to be watching a presentation called "Where Trans Activism and Abolition Meet." And this is a presentation from an organization called the Center for Applied Transgender Studies. Well, what is that? Well, let's just go and see. I mean, they got 84 subscribers on their YouTube channel. The Center for Applied Transgender Studies is the leading academic organization dedicated to scholarship on the social, cultural, and political conditions of transgender life. They've got a homepage. Looks very purple. Looks like that's a Divi homepage there if I've ever seen one. So this looks like, I mean, they at least got their stuff together enough to bring a homepage. We are an independent nonprofit research organization run by transgender people and for transgender people. Okay, they haven't really given us any information about what they're about yet, but the fact that they have the term abolition in the title of their webinar, that gives me pause as to what we're going to find here. And this is a relatively new webinar. This was 1 month ago. 1 month. And the description is as follows: how are racial justice, trans liberation, there's another socialist word, how are racial justice, trans liberation, and abolition linked? This panel brings together a group of Black trans scholar activists to explore the relationship between trans activist movements and abolition in North America and beyond. And it looks like we got some professors from the University of Toronto. We got a professor from the University of North Carolina, Asheville, another one from University of Toronto, and a PhD candidate at Northwestern. So I think we're going to be able to have a good little socialist presentation today. I'm looking forward to it. Guys, of course, we have some housekeeping business before we get started. Now, tomorrow, we have some activities. Tomorrow, of course, is Socialism Saturday. We will be doing Socialism Saturday at 6 p.m. tomorrow. We will be watching another presentation from the same center at the University of Pennsylvania that brought us last week's Socialism Saturday. They have a new presentation up this week called Life After Capitalism. So we will be watching that tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern Time on my channel. But before that, not that one, this one. Before we get to that, we have Bitchcraft in my supporter community. Bitchcraft is an open Zoom call where we bitch and we craft. And you can bring any craft. Of course, I will be knitting as the far more superior of all crafts. But all crafts are welcome. You can crochet, you can quilt, you can sew, you can draw, you can paint, you can make jewelry, you can clean your gun, you can fold laundry, you can play video games, you can just come hang out. We will be having Bitchcraft tomorrow in my supporter community at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, and I will let you know how to get involved in that in a second. We will also be having on Sunday, we are continuing our movie night extravaganza. We do movie nights weekly in my supporter Discord, and it is Jennifer January, and a very happy birthday to Jennifer. I know her birthday was yesterday, and so belated happy birthday, Jennifer. I apologize for not wishing you happy birthday yesterday. I was up to my ears in autistic sex education. I didn't even know what day it was, so I apologize for that. But Jennifer is a much valued and much loved member of my community, and she is the host of Movie Night. And it's her birthday month, and so she gets to pick out all the movies. And she has picked out a phenomenal movie for us to watch on Sunday. We are watching Equilibrium. This is one of my favorite dystopian movies. My husband made me watch this movie like years ago, and I didn't really want to do it at the time because I thought it looked stupid. But then my husband made me watch it, and it was not stupid. It was really good. And so we will be watching that at 8 p.m. in the supporter Discord. We also have book club coming up. You got about a little over a month to be able to read Ender's Game. We're reading a good nonfiction sci-fi. If you've never read Ender's Game, not see the movie's different than the book. Like, read the book, come and talk about it with us, because it is a phenomenal book. It's a book, like, I have never met a person that's read Ender's Game that didn't end up loving this book. And the audio version of this book is fantastic. I've listened to it several times. They did a really good job with it. So we will be reading Ender's Game and having a book club next month. But of course, I like to give you guys time to get the book, read the book, all that good stuff. So, how do you get access to all of these amazing activities? Well, I'm glad you asked. If you head over to activelyunwoke.com/support, and you will find a link in the description below. In order to get access to these activities, you need to support my work through a financial contribution of some sort. You can become a member of this YouTube channel, of my main YouTube channel that you're watching on right now if you're on my main YouTube channel. And I will be sending out the information to supporters on my main YouTube channel who are channel members. Other ways that you can become a supporter is by becoming a member in my locals community for $5 a month or for $50 a year, depending on how you want to do it. You get a couple months free if you do it annually. My locals community is the best. I really do believe I have the best community on all of locals. They are nice, they're kind, they're engaging. There's no outrage junkies, there's no bullshit, there's no bickering, none of that stuff. So you can become a member of my locals community and get access. You can also become a member on Patreon. Patreon has a bunch of different levels of perks, anywhere from $5 a month all the way up to $250 a month, depending on what you want. And what types of perks you want. Some people just are more inclined to Patreon, so I wanted to give you guys that example. And then, as I said earlier, you can become a paying supporter on one of my monetized Substacks, which is either Actively Unwoke, which is my main Substack, or the Red Pill Diaries, which is this little project I'm kind of playing around with. But I do have it monetized in case people do want to support me on there. But whatever is clever for you. And those are all the different ways that you can get involved. And so I will be sending out links to my supporter Discord and links to join our Bitchcraft Zoom tomorrow out to people who are monthly supporters in my community. As my thank you, I do try to do lots of extra perks for people who are in my community because I really do appreciate it, guys. I can't do it without you. You're the best. All right. Couple last things. Number one, we've got a genderqueer bingo card. And we're gonna have a Socialism Saturday bingo card this week too, thanks to Sin in my community. And so this is a different bingo card than the one we used to play with. I have it pinned to the top of the chat in YouTube. And the way that genderqueer bingo works, or any bingo works, is you generate your card, and every card is unique, and you get a free space in the middle. And then every time one of these terms is said out loud, you want to try to get your line or your corners. And if you get a bingo, shout out bingo in the chat. You won't win anything, but we'll give you a hearty round of applause and congratulations. And after we get a single bingo, then we go for blackout bingo. And we actually have never gotten a blackout bingo on happy hour. We did get a blackout bingo on another day that we played bingo on that was not happy hour, but we have yet to get a blackout bingo on happy hour. So I have full faith it's going to happen eventually. And if anyone's curious, it was the Portland, Oregon school district that led to blackout bingo. It was our school investigation stream about that, because that was nuts. That was next level. But the bingo card is back, and you can access that by through the link pinned to the top of the chat. And the very, very, very last thing before we get started is I have to show you guys my beer, because this is happy hour, and so I do have a beer or two. I always go to the beer store. I have a craft beer store literally right down the street from me now, which is pretty great. And I get 4 craft beers. Now I'm not gonna drink all these beers on the stream. Don't worry, I'm not a glutton. I gotta save some for Socialism Saturday, and occasionally I like to drink when I'm not live on the internet. But let me tell you what beers I have, and then you guys get to vote about which one I start with. And if you have a fun drink that you're sharing and that you're enjoying today, let us know. But let me see, what do we have today? Well, our first beer is it's got a cool image on it. It is not Peroni, no Murphy's Pool. We do not drink Italian water beer on my channel. This is called Passion Berry Tasty. And this is, I swear to God, I saw a description of it somewhere, a smoothie style sour ale brewed with passion fruit, raspberry, and milk sugar. So that's our first one, Passion Berry. Our next one, and I'm actually really excited about this one. Check this out. This is from Liquid Therapy, White Chocolate Mint Golden Stout. I love golden stouts. I don't see them very often, but I have never had a golden stout that I have not enjoyed. And come on, white chocolate mint? It seems a little weird, but maybe it'll be great. Who knows? Our next one is my beer is falling all over the place. Oh no. My next one, check this out. This is like the most New Hampshire beer ever. Blueberry pancake ale. Look at that can. And this is a sour beer. Again, it's blueberry, so that would definitely be sour. Does it have any other descriptor? Nope, that's it. Blueberry pancake. And then our last one, and I got to be honest, this one caught my eye just because of the can. I'm building a cool beer can collection in my office, and so I'm like always on the lookout for like cool beer cans because some people just get so creative. But like it had this monster on it, and it is called Liquid Rad Lollipop, and this is from Froth Brewing, and it is raspberry, blackberry, and marshmallow. So those are our options. You got passionberry, you got white chocolate golden mint stout, you got blueberry pancake, and you got liquid rad. Poll is in the chat. Let me know which one you want me to drink first. And while you're doing that, I will get set up to do our stream today. And please mount that like button. Barb says all my beers sound like drinks at Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts. I mean, that might not be a coincidence, Barb. All right. I like fruity beer. I like sours. I like fruity beer, and I like stouts, and I like porters. But I don't like IPAs. IPAs are gross. IPAs are pissing contests for men to show how tough guy they are. Man, what a crazy week this has been. How many of you were at the webinar last night? Holy shit. Can I tell you, while you guys are voting for this, can I tell you that I don't think it hit me during the webinar how bad it was, but as I was staying up till 4 a.m. editing all those clips, I was like, I kept getting sadder and sadder. I was like, this is really bad. Like, it was really, really, really bad. All right. Oh, looks like Blueberry Pancakes winning the day-to-day. Bot will be thrilled. Oh, looks like Bot wanted Lollipop. Yeah, that was the Lollipop beer, Bot, but Blueberry Pancake it is. Dominating polling today. Hang on. I actually ended up feeling bad for Dylan, to be honest. I feel like Dylan is like a useful idiot and has probably really struggled in life and like has been totally brainwashed by probably everyone around them. I didn't think that Dylan was evil. I didn't think that Dylan was like a true believer. But man, I just ended up feeling sad for them, I guess. And I even felt sad for them while they were shitting on me on the internet because Dylan was like going, "She's a right-wing lunatic," which of course I'm not. I'm a libertarian. I'm a libertarian who doesn't care if people are trans or bisexual or non-binary or pansexual or asexual or any sexual or drag queens. I don't care. Like, I am probably, of all of the people that could have exposed that bullshit last night, I was honestly probably one of the kinder people that could have encountered that, if we're being blunt. And all I did was quote Dylan, and Dylan was like, "Quoting me is violence." All right, bro. Oh, shit. All right, let me pour this beer I bought. I bet it's going to be purple. Look how purple. Is Ender's Game really required reading, Brian? Is that true? Or are you just saying, like, they really should read it? That is beautiful. Look at that beer. Oh my god, it smells like maple syrup. This beer doesn't smell like blueberry, it smells like maple syrup. Wow. Beautiful. Cheers, guys. Happy Friday. All right. Let's get this party started where trans activism and abolition meet.
Director of the Center for Applied Transgender Studies. I'm so excited to have this conversation with these three brilliant scholar activists.
Okay, I'm going to do my usual thing where I'm going to turn down my microphone volume and I need everyone to turn up their volume because I'm trying to level out our volumes because I don't have a soundboard because I'm not fancy like that. But I can turn down my microphone volume. And then everyone, to include me, are going to turn up our volume. And so then the volume should be comparable. You know, I've played around with home brewing. I've dabbled. Um there was a time when I was like I kind of wanted to I was kind of studying thinking I was going to like take the Cicerone test just for fun, not because I wanted to actually do that. Like that's like kind of like a beer, like you know how like wine has like sommeliers. Cicerone is like the beer version of a sommelier, and I was just like doing it for bragging rights, but I kind of lost interest in it, to be honest. All right.
/ many
That's
other
better.
roles. So let's jump right in. I'll introduce you all one by one, and
Is
then
the
give
volume
you
okay?
about 5 or so minutes to talk about your work, your research.
5 minutes? They each get 5
and how your
minutes?
work engages
We
with
don't need to
politics
spend
of
15
race,
minutes hearing
trans
about how
identity,
great
and
you are.
abolition. So we'll do alphabetical order just to not make it feel like there's any kind of hierarchy except for the full hierarchy. And also, so captions, a lot of captions are on. So if you need captions,
Oh, captions. I'll turn
should have the
captions on.
option to see the captions and to open a full transcript on the side. All right, so
But
let's
can you take
start
the
with
caps
T.
down a notch?
Alexander.
Just
So
take it
Dr. T.
down.
Alexander is a queer, trans, Black Puerto Rican scholar, educator, and organizer. They're an assistant professor of gender, sexuality, and trans studies in curriculum and pedagogy at the Ontario Institute for Studies in Education at the University of Toronto. Their current research explores pedagogies of abolitionist practices in the lives, or in the lived experience, of Black trans folks.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to start off by saying, please excuse me because I'm a little under the weather. So I'm a little slow, brain foggy, and a little nasally, but I'm really, really grateful to be here with you all today.
He looks like he's in a dorm room.
Again, my name is Key. My pronouns are they, them.
Oh, they,
and
sorry.
I'm an assistant professor of gender, sexuality, and trans studies in curriculum and pedagogy. So mostly my work is thinking about the intersection of education and queer and trans studies, particularly thinking about political education in movements, thinking about lived experience as like a pedagogical project that can we learn more about. So right now my research is about abolitionist praxis, particularly how people are teaching.
Oh shit. Oh god, I didn't mean to do that. God damn it. That was my fault. I didn't mean to do that. Wrong button. I was trying to answer Sydney's question here. Okay, for those who are doing genderqueer bingo, I thought this would probably be a question because I know I've had this question too. What is AMAB or AFAB? Assigned male at birth or assigned female at birth? Brian, you got it. Brian knew. And thank you for Skidmark for being a channel member for 11 months. Says hi chat and a member chat. I appreciate that. Thank you, Skidmark.
Great. So next we have Blue Alexander, or getting people's names mixed up already. Blue Buchanan.
Actually has
So
amazing
Dr.
hair,
Blue
that
Buchanan
person.
Is a postdoctoral university fellow
Really good
in
hair.
the
Come on.
Department of
Gotta give credit where
Anthropology and
credit's due.
Sociology at the University of North Carolina, Asheville. Their research focuses broadly on the role of violence in everyday life, which informs their twin research trajectories, studying whiteness and masculinity as projects shaping intracommunal violence in the LGBT community, and the practices and habits Black trans folks develop to resist and decenter violence in their everyday lives.
Hi, folks. Welcome. So yeah, just to add a little bit more to that, I'm a sociologist by training.
Oh, of course, a sociologist. I want to say, I really hope I don't dislike this person too much because I really do like their hair, which I know is not how we should be judging people. I get it, okay, but I do like their hair.
My focus is on historical and interview methods. And I come to the question of abolition from both a trans and a race and a labor perspective in particular, right? Just a shout out to UAW 2865, which is on strike right now. That was my home where I really started thinking about both trans organizing and trans study and abolition work more broadly. So really imagining what the role of labor is in making our workplaces safe, and talking about like anti-police as a movement for safety in the workplace. So in terms of my work, I study gay men's participation in right-wing social movements. Just finished up the
That's a thing?
dissertation in September.
Gay men's participation in right-wing social movements. Do we have any gay men in my chat who are participating in a right-wing social movement? Brian says, how many channel SB would you need? I don't understand the question. How many channel? I don't understand the question, Brian. I'm sorry. Soundboard. Oh, thank you. I have no idea how that stuff works. I have absolutely no idea. If you can, Brian, if you can help me out with this, let's connect on that because I truly and completely, I didn't even know what the abbreviation meant. Okay, this is something I feel like I've put together a lot of technology stuff, but this is the one thing that I haven't broached yet. So, we should connect in a Zoom call or something if you can help out with that, and I would appreciate it. Awesome. I appreciate that, Brian. Thank you.
And I look at everything from your run-of-the-mill log cabin Republicans over to your gay neo-Nazis. This informs
Barb, you're
my
like a
work
prophet,
around
Barb.
both trans studies and trans abolition efforts.
I am gonna hate this person after all. I know it.
Because it's like understanding the enemy, right? You got to know how
Your
systems
enemy
of
are
violence
gay men?
operate, and particularly how systems of tokenism work, right? This is also
Oh, all gay
absolutely
men who don't
important
agree with
for
you
us
are
to
tokens. Got it.
understand as organizers. And I'm actually interested in how some of our overlap is going to go, because talking about things like Black study have also been important to me, right? Thinking about study outside of the university, thinking about the undercommons in particular, thinking about funneling the resources we have.
Hang on. I want to take Steve's question because like pop quiz for the chat. I know the answer to this, but do you know the answer to this? Steve wants to know WTF is trans abolition. Does anyone want to take a step? I almost just knocked my beer off the desk and it was about to become. I have a lot of cups on my desk right now. I have like water, I have coffee, and I almost knocked it off. It was almost an emergency. Anyway, does anyone want to answer Steve's question about WTF is trans abolition? Yes, exactly. That means they want to abolish gender. I don't know if they want to abolish sexuality, but they absolutely want to abolish gender. They want everyone to be non-binary. So it's not even that they want you to transition from like man to woman or woman to man. They want to abolish it entirely and they want to create a world of theys. That is what trans abolition is. Skidmark, thank you for the super chat. I've only listened for 5 minutes so far, and I already feel like I'm jumping off a cliff. I watched a video earlier today with a guy with a full beard saying he was a female. Stop the world. I want to get off. Skidmark, did you watch Autistic Sex Education last night? Because if you really want to have your mind blown, go back to last night's stream. It was a fun time. All right, guys, let's keep going.
as scholars into our local communities is really exciting. And I'm so looking forward to having this conversation with this group of scholars.
Oh, that's a good one, Sin. That sounds great. King
Great,
Peter is
thank
drinking
you.
absinthe?
And so the last
Fancy,
person to
Peter. Did you
introduce
do
to
the
everyone
spoon?
today
Did you
is
do the sugar with the
Dr.
spoon?
S.A. Smythe, who is a poet, transdisciplinary artist, translator, and critical theorist. They're currently
Yay!
assistant professor of Black Studies and the Archive in the Faculty of Information at the University of Toronto. Their work focuses on the liberatory aspects of Black belonging beyond borders, specifically with
Exactly right,
regards
Steve.
to
Well
trans
done.
embodiment
Demolition
in
Man.
poetics,
Exactly right.
citizenship and migration, colonial history, and the literary imagination.
Oh, I bet that's good. Sin Angry Orchard does a good job.
Thank you, Eri. Thanks, everyone. I think I was unmuted for this whole time, so sorry if that did something to your screens. I'm in the Faculty of Information, but I'm from the past. So yeah, I am really excited to be here. I'm also, like Blue, really excited to see where this conversation is going to go with the different overlaps. This is definitely no shade to the organizers. Shout out to Eri, TJ, and everyone at CATS. But I also, Blue, your question, I'm
They
already
call
not
it
doing the
CAT.
introduction, but when Blue mentioned
They call the Center for Applied Transgender Studies CATS. These people have to ruin everything. Even cats.
The relevance of Black studies, which is where I locate myself. I was also thinking and wondering if we could talk about trans activism, trans of color activism, and Black trans activism, and the distinctions between the two, as well as the convergences. So I'm just putting that on the table. But yeah, like Eri said, I'm working in Black Studies and the Archive at U of T. I came to abolition from the point of view of migration, not so much migration studies, but my actual embodied experience. And when I was at university in Italy, working and coming into fellowship with East African people in Italy and African migrants in the Southern Mediterranean.
You know what a question just occurred to me? And I don't know, I want to get your guys' opinion. What if I tried to invite that person with the good hair that studies gay men in right-wing movements? What if I tried to trick them into coming and interview on my channel? Do you guys think I could get away with that? Like, if I just reached out to this person and I was like, I saw your webinar on the Center for Applied Transgender, whatever the hell channel, and I was just really interested in your work about gay men in right-wing movements. Can you come on my channel and answer some questions for me? Do you think I could get away with like fooling that person? But they might not know. I mean, not everyone in the world knows me. In fact, very few people in the world know me. Bree, I'm filming West Wing this weekend. I put it in the calendar just for you. I promise it'll be up this weekend. I promise, and I apologize. Angry Orchard is good, but have you had hard cider from small business cideries? It's usually a bit different. I agree with this, Bree. Angry Orchard is good for like a mass-produced cider. I think it's fine. But I think that there are a lot of really good small batch cideries out there, and mead as well. I mean, maybe it might be just worth trying. I could try. I don't know. We'll give it a go.
And that's where my primary research is focused. But I say not migration studies, and I know we're already kind of talking about disciplinary methods and investment and the abolition of studies in a university
Hi,
sense.
Douglas over on LinkedIn.
But actually it comes from
I'm streaming on LinkedIn now. I'm definitely not going to get kicked off or anything.
Coming to understand how we get coordinated and organized in relation to discipline, not just in the academic context, but in relation to the state. I also came to sort of make those connections through, like Blue, my presence in the University of California system, where I went to graduate school in history of consciousness and was a professor.
Well, I'm really glad you found the channel, Steve. Welcome. We're really glad you're here. I do spy stream on a fairly regular basis. Anytime I find something like really good. I actually, guys, already have my next spy stream scheduled. I'm going inside a planning call for the Democratic Socialists of America. I already have it scheduled. It's going to be in, I think it's on the 26th. It's already scheduled on the channel. And so we'll be going inside that call to hear what the Democratic Socialists of America are planning. It's going to be great. But if you guys ever come across these live webinars, let me know, because we might be able to spy stream it. It really depends partly on my schedule, but I appreciate that. And Steve, we're glad you found us.
Before U of T at UCLA, and basically, hoed my way through 5 of the 10 UC campuses. So
hang on, got another super chat from Bree. Bree, thank you for this. Is everyone over there? I don't know. See, I see both chats at the same time. So I am streaming on my 2 YouTube channels right now, because I'm slowly transitioning this back over to my main channel. And so I am still streaming there. You guys are welcome to chat there. You can chat here. I can see both. So I don't know who's in what chat. Bree says, my aunt and uncle used to own a cidery, and I got to help them taking care of the trees and taste testing the ciders. Oh, Bree, I bet that was fun. What a cool experience. And then Elena says, I am drinking a rhubarb and ginger gin. Oh, I love rhubarb. Rhubarb wine is one of my favorite things. There is a vineyard. Well, not a vineyard, but I guess like a wine a place that makes like fruit wine, about an hour, 15 minutes north of where I live. And somehow, like every once in a while, I drive up there just to buy a case of like their dry rhubarb wine, because it's so, so, so good. It is the best. It's great in summer, man. If you've never tried rhubarb wine, try rhubarb wine, because it's really effing good.
total solidarity to the UC workers. That is definitely where I came to understand. California is where I came to understand the US struggles for abolition, and with my own previous background and those of my community in organizing spaces in the UK and Italy, came to see anti-colonial, decolonial struggles as directly within the genealogy of abolition. And so that is what I'm especially wanting to talk about later on. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Sorry, I was like taking notes already, just in those introductions. I'm already seeing so many different directions and questions and connections. Yes, shout out to University of California. I'm currently, I'm at Northwestern, and we are on our way, hopefully, to unionizing the graduate workers there.
Snaps.
So labor is definitely, I think, a big kind of topic here. But let's kind of have a baseline of how you all see racial justice, trans activism.
This person's microphone sucks. It's their mic. It's not me.
And I think
it's their mic.
That your point about trans activism, trans of color activism, and Black trans activism as each being kind of distinct movements, I think will play into this question. But let's start with some kind of basic, like, what are the connections between these different movements, and what are the intersections there? And also, we can bring up, like, what are the differences? What are the divisions between all of these movements?
Now the real question is who's going to go first?
I can jump in. So I'm thinking a lot about how actually was just at NWSA and saw a lot of beautiful faces, and shout out to the For the Girls
What
panel.
is NWSA?
And it was interesting. I went to a panel that
we need
was
to figure
about
that out. What
reproductive
is that?
justice and trans
rights. It's a conference of some
there
sort.
was this conversation about human rights, and if we should
NWSA.
be kind of like chasing the human rights framework to think about how we're thinking about trans people and reproductive rights. And there was somebody in the audience who had said, I don't think we should throw away the human rights thing. I think it's been useful.
I'm fairly positive that NWSA is National Women's Studies Organization, their conference. So that might be something to look into. Why this person is at the National Women's Studies Association conference, I'm not entirely sure. But I guess I guess non-binary people can study women too. It's fine.
Right. And I really like how the panel responded, which was this kind of idea of
Oh,
like,
Brian
well,
hadn't even
what do
fried
rights
it.
do?
Brian,
Like,
king of the
what do
chat.
our rights
Brian is a
actually do?
champion tonight.
And if we're saying that we want to
King of
rely
the
on a
chat for the
human rights
day.
or a civil rights model, what are the ways that those rights frameworks fall short for our communities anyways, right? And so people are not getting what they need out of healthcare generally in the US, right? And so to say, oh, well, we'll put it in the civil rights bag around healthcare, we're not actually meeting the needs of our communities. So I think that, and to Essay's point about the differences between like Black trans activism and other types of trans activism, I do think that there's a skew around representation versus survival. And I think that Black trans folks are trying to think about how to stay alive in these really real ways, versus just how to be represented by the state. And I think also too, there's this connection with when civil rights doesn't protect you, the opposite happens where it seeks to criminalize you, right? And so these civil rights frameworks are actually ways of negotiating who are we allowed to criminalize and who are we not allowed to criminalize, right? And I just see these ways in which in the US we create these pockets.
I had no doubt, King Peter.
Kind of like twisting and manipulating rights frameworks to figure out, who we need another set of people to criminalize and send for their exploited labor to prison, right? So I think about something as an educator thinking about, the defunding of public education, right? Like Republicans want to pull the plug on education.
Oh, libertarians
and for me, the first
do
thing
too.
that comes to mind is, well,
my
school's
God.
compulsory and you're required to go to school. But if we get rid of public schooling, basically we will then be allowed to criminalize a whole fraction of people who can't afford to go to school.
That's not what's going to happen.
Right. And so I think there are all these ways in which criminalization is something that we have to hold in the center.
That's one I hadn't heard before. School choice and abolishing government education is going to lead to criminalizing people. Well, no, because when you abolish government schools, you also abolish government mandates over the type of education that's required. Who on earth says that the laws around how would they even track that? How would they even be able to track who's being homeschooled, who's going to a homeschool pod, who's going to charter school, who's going to a private school? He's making this shit up. Oh, sorry, they's making this shit up.
Much like Blue said, also thinking about labor and the relationship.
They're all day today, I think.
Labor, I think is like an important intersection to tease through.
Do you guys know how I keep telling you that they don't want people to be trans, they want people to be non-binary, so they want to create a world of theys? Every single person on this panel that we're watching today has they pronouns. Every single one of them. Because non-binary is the point. Trans is not the point. Non-binary is the point.
Should I go? Okay. I was just gonna say, just to pull out some of the threads that I think I'm hearing, right, is around anti-statism and anti-statism, particularly from the perspective of like Black trans abolition work. And here I want to maybe reframe, or not just to talk about survival, but to talk about like Black thriving and Black trans thriving in particular. That like Black trans folks getting their needs met through and with each other in the face of obstacles, I think is a really important way of thinking about this. Often when Black trans folks are positioned as like objects of death that then like trans activism more broadly utilizes to be like,
it is the trans community themselves that has positioned Black trans folks as an object of death. They were the ones that perpetuated this. Now, I'm not going to say that bad things don't happen to sex workers, but it seems to me that that might be more of a function of being a sex worker than it does, I mean, I'm sure the risk is there regardless, but the fact of the matter is that it is trans activists that have perpetuated the stereotype that all Black trans people are in danger at all times, and I don't think that the statistics actually bear that out. Hey, Jennifer, happy belated birthday! I apologize, I wasn't in the Discord meeting, but I was making clips until 4 a.m. I know you forgive me, but we love you, Jennifer. I hope you had a wonderful birthday.
Like, look, this is why you need to give us rights. And so, yeah, I think drawing out a tradition, particularly within Black trans abolition work, that is anti-statist in its origins, not just sort of dealing
that's
with
your
human
prerogative,
rights, but
Murphy's
asking,
Fool.
is it possible to get our needs met outside of the state? And particularly for the Black trans folks in the United States, talking about within a settler colonial anti-Black apparatus, right? And so when I think about sort of civil rights, trans activism, abolition, to me, what that abolition is calling for is meeting each other's needs at a community level. And that's one of the reasons why I think this panel is so exciting, is because it's opening up the conversation, hopefully, to talk about what we can do outside of just being represented within the academy. So yeah, I again really want to sort of talk about anti-statism around abolition, and how we can imagine meeting each other's needs outside of representation and tokenism more broadly.
Representation is a Babylon thing, so are rights. Listen, what Key was talking about, I'm just pivoting the energy a little, I hope that's okay. Eri said that this was a conversation, and so that's what I'm excited about. Yeah, I mean, I wish I was at that panel, Key, because that sounds like a dope and generous response coming from, I'm going to say this all the time, like each turn, but like the transnational perspective is really important to me. It's like shaped my being politically and certainly otherwise. And I, sometimes we have conversations, and I think it's really important, which is why I'm like, not trying to start shit, but like, let's name the distinction so that we know what it is that we're talking about when we are convening at a given moment. Because we say something like rights, and yeah, in the US, it means something. But if you're then thinking, or in the US for US citizens, it means something. And those rendered non-citizen or non-citizens precisely, it means something else. Thinking about human rights in the space that I study, that I organize in as well, like the Mediterranean, thinking about human rights takes on a very sinister valence, that like migrants and people that are rendered refugees, asylum seekers, Roma people, etc., are fundamentally anti-statist because the state is anti-them and has been founded precisely to be.
This is a really great point from King Brian of the chat, and the reason that this is a great point that we all need to remind ourselves of is these people are not interested in solving the problems that they claim to care about, because their purpose in life is not to find a solution to a problem. It is not to make the world a better place. Their purpose in life is to be an activist. And so they're always going to be attacking a problem. And guess what? If no problem exists, then they're going to create a problem, or they're going to manufacture a problem in order to have something to fight, because it is not about the solution. It is only about the fight.
That and to do that, and then it makes us, those of us who are citizens, complicit in the project of the state. And so yeah, I mean, I'm totally with both of you, and I also think that fundamental awareness and need for human rights does not need to then be thrown out, right? Like Stuart Hall told us decades ago about both ends, and I think, you know, it is fair to both struggle for within the terrain, the discourses that we have, human rights, civil rights, etc., and also to acknowledge that if we're talking about something like civil rights, some of us were always rendered uncivil. If we're talking about human rights, some of us have been fundamentally rendered and inhuman. In fact, in order for human to exist, some of us, the Black of us, have needed to constantly be the bedrock of modernity, right? That's what anti-Blackness teaches us and disciplines us into always. And so I think that moving towards something like Black trans thrival is something that I've written about, something that I think about all the time. I'm really happy to hear it. I really also, I would love to talk maybe more about how to get folks on board, because this then seems also to me like an issue of education and anti-indoctrination, because like with the theme of abolition or the topic of abolition, there are folks who are like, well, then what's the blueprint? Like, what's the plan? As though literally struggling and resisting and like forming community bonds and doing the local work that we need to survive on the way to thrival.
Welcome, Cobb Squared.
Is not being.
Yeah,
is
it
not
is better
place,
over here.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, I just want to riff off that for a moment. Right, but this is absolutely and I'm sure all of us doing abolition work have heard the like, well, if you get rid of this thing, what are you gonna do? Right? And when we get to talking about the undercommons and things like that, folks are like, the absence or the tearing down of something creates opportunities for new things, new imaginings that would not have been possible under previous regimes or institutions, right? And so I just want to sort of name that, particularly for those folks who are listening, who are maybe starting to have conversations about abolition, you will get a lot of pushback being like, well, if you get rid of this, what are you going to replace it with? And I really want to sort of acknowledge that essay, like what you're naming is also that is a process or a practice, not just an end goal, right? Or a blueprint that we have.
You know, the reason that I really like the way this is playing out, because for those of you who were here on Wednesday when we did Impromptu Socialism Live, when we basically, we engaged in a little bit of mischief taking over the chat on the Socialist Book Publishers channel, Haymarket Books. And I bring this up not because the mischief in the chat was really fun, but it was. It was so great. But in that presentation where we were taking over their chat, they said over and over and over again, we just want to get rid of capitalism. We just want to get rid of capitalism. We just want to get rid of capitalism. And a bunch of us asked, like, okay, and replace it with what? And they were like, well, we'll figure it out. We don't know. And then we were like, so you mean real socialism has never been tried? They're like, no, real socialism has never been tried. And then we were like, okay, so what does real socialism look like then? And how are you going to make sure you try real socialism this time so that it's much more successful than the last time that real socialism has never been tried? And they were like, we'll figure it out after we abolish capitalism. And that is the same thing they say every time. So as a reminder for those of you who are new to me, the 4 goals of the woke left always and forever are: gain as much power as possible, destabilize the system, attack capitalism, usher in your Marxist utopia. In roughly that order, but they can accommodate more than one goal at a time. And so everything they do is to honor those 4 goals: gain as much power as possible, destabilize the system, attack capitalism, usher in their Marxist utopia. But they don't know how they're going to usher in their Marxist utopia. They have no idea how they're going to do it. They have some vision of a utopian society in which no one has to work and everyone can be autists all day long and everyone is just taken care of by everyone else. You will own nothing and you will be happy. But they have no idea how they're going to do it. And this is something, if you ever encounter a socialist in real life, you need to hammer them on the how. Not because you're going to change their mind, because you are not going to change their mind at all. But you might change the mind of people around you who are like, they don't know what they're gonna do. It's kind of like when the Republicans tried to repeal Obamacare. And then when they were trying to repeal Obamacare, we were all like, what are you going to replace it with? And they were like, we'll tell you once we repeal it. And guess what? For people like me, and I was a Democrat at that point, but I was also like, it's just a practical thing to do. If you're going to take something away, and I was actually on Obamacare at that time. This is why I was paying attention to it. My husband and I were actually like on Obamacare at that time. We were on it for a year when I was starting like my self-employment, and he didn't have a job that had benefits. And so I was like, what are you going to replace it with? Not that Obamacare was that great, because Obamacare, quite frankly, fucking sucked. But it was like, they had no effing plan. And so there was nothing to be able to articulate. And so that completely cut out their legs out from under them to be able to say like, okay, yeah, Obamacare kind of sucks, but like, you guys don't have a fucking plan either. Yeah, you can't know what's in the bill until we pass it. Exactly. Idiots. Never underestimate the power of the Republican Party to be complete and total morons. No offense to any Republicans who are watching. All right, let's keep going.
Have to like sign off on or approve before undertaking it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, this question of like misinformation in education,
It's a good
right?
one.
Like, I think that oftentimes part of what I think is so powerful of Black trans life and Black trans ways of thinking is to kind of just to poke holes in where we see binaries show up. Because I think this conversation about abolition is often put in a binary, right? And I think we're asking the wrong questions. The question is like, should we have police? Yes or no? And that's like not
No.
the right question. The right question is, what do we do to keep our communities safe? Right? Those are different things. And so I think
That is
part
actually a good
of
point.
one of the powerful things of like Black trans folks leading abolitionist movements is to kind of like poke holes in the ways in which we're reproducing, like SA said, right? Like we can become complicit in these things because we've gotten some rights or we've gotten access to things that other people don't do. And I think, and especially as someone who was like born and raised in the US and have spent my entire life, except for now.
Hang on, we got a super chat coming in from Bree. Bree says, you can't know what's in the bill until we pass it, was one of the main talking points to get the ACA passed. And again, well, Bree, I'm not saying that it's a good talking point when Democrats do it. It's a sucky talking point on both sides. Again, Obamacare sucked. Being on Obamacare sucked. Really bad. My health insurance is much better now through my husband's employer. So I'm not the great defender of Obamacare, but if you're going to repeal if you were going to repeal the sucky ass solution, you should at least be able to propose something that's better.
Now I live in Canada. It is this, I am continually being humbled by the ways in which US propaganda has really shaped the ways in which I'm even allowed to think about my own identity in my own communities. And it has actually been being in community with international scholars like SA, like being able to be in Canada and meet people from all over the world. I am, like I said, humbled by the fact that this like part of being an American is part of being complicit in these systems. And like Blue said, this anti-statism is a place where we can be a place of solidarity with folks who are outside of our current, country context, right? And I think that, we'll stop there.
I just wanted to add again, I promise we'll get to the next question. It's just like, for example, I want to recognize that one of the things we talked about was like settler colonialism and colonialism more broadly. Like, again, one of the ways that we can help to sort of bridge the conversation about transnational abolition, about these processes, is recognizing the labor conditions that help to produce them, and specifically about how things like settler colonialism, these processes are are transnational. Like the British weren't just like, oh, we're gonna stop right here in this little bubble, right? That's gonna be our area that we're influencing. And so the connections are already there. And in fact, if we really sort of look at colonialism, I think more carefully, something that many scholars in the US don't do, we end up having a really rich area for co-organizing.
So scholarship is just about organizing. Is that what you're saying? That kind of sounds like what you were saying.
Yeah, yeah, so totally want to keep this a conversation. So feel free to continue ripping off of each other as much as you want. I want to pop in and say something about the transnational and thinking about these connections. I was on not the reproductive rights and trans healthcare panel, but I was on the for the girls or for the dolls roundtable, which was about sort of trans femme of color experiences. And one of my panelists brought up the murder of Jennifer Lawdy in the Philippines, who was, if I'm remembering correctly, who was a sex worker who was who had John, who was an American Navy officer, some military something or other. I really should have like looked this up before coming here, but and like thinking, that really got me thinking about how like the U.S. and the U.S. military industrial complex, the U.S. police states, the U.S. security state, like has these like effects all over the globe. Of course, the Philippines as a former colony of the U.S. And yeah, I don't know. I don't really have a question from that, but that was just like something that got me like thinking.
I just
like,
wanted
even
to
if
ramble for a
we
couple
like
minutes
are
without making any
even
verifiable
if we're
point.
like thinking just about the U.S. context, which we're not today, but if that was the case, like it's impossible to think about abolition just in the U.S. Like abolition in the U.S. also has ripples in the rest of the world, in abolition elsewhere. Yeah. I don't know. Does anyone want to continue on that topic? Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so one of the things that I study is the 1033 program, which for folks who don't know what that is, it's basically a US program that funnels military surplus to local police departments across the United States for only the cost of shipping. So this is how we end up with like mine resistant, ambush protected vehicles in West Lafayette, Indiana, which for those who are not Hoosiers, there is no reason. Like this is a little college town, right? The 1033 program combines with other things that are going on that I think, again, to your conversation about the US military industrial complex. So the 1033 program, in order to get some of these weaponry, right, to get these mine resistant vehicles, they have to show that they know how to use them. And so there are conferences set up around the US, and I'm sure elsewhere as well, that basically are where military experts come to teach local police department members how to use the weapons and the tactics and strategies the military uses to transfer those skills to local police departments in the United States, right? So I want to note that the kind of strategies and tactics, the imperialism abroad is deeply connected to the imperialism within the settler colonial
That's a
state
lot of
that is
salad right
the
there. You guys want to put some
US.
salad icons in the chat? That's
And
a
so
lot
the
of
very
salad.
experiences that people are having of being like shot and tear gassed, etc. These are this is the same tear gas that we're finding in Palestine, right? These are the same weapons, the same tools that are being used elsewhere. And so I think that it's important to sort of trace those material things as well. And I wanted to note that with Jennifer Laud, the other thing was that the US military, he was either Navy or Marines, that they specifically like brought him back onto the boat in order to exert US jurisdiction, so that he would not be prosecuted in the Philippines, right? So there's also this moving jurisdiction, this moving settler colonial apparatus, right? That allows trans antagonism, and particularly trans antagonism against folks of color, to continue.
Okay, bot, thank you. Jeez.
SA, did you want it? I saw that you had your mic off earlier. I didn't know if you wanted to respond.
I'm just constantly touching that thing, but I'm happy to wait for the
Well,
next question.
Kurt
Okay.
is making a great point in the chat. Great point. The more I listen, the more convinced I am that they don't understand each other's bullshit either, and just say great point, and then they go off and say what they want to say. Anyway, Kurt, I 100% agree with you. I think a lot of times, and you can kind of tell that it's happening because they're like, yeah, great queen. Oh my god. Oh my, oh my god, you're so amazing. You are stunning, and you are brave, and you are beautiful. It's just, oh man, it's like what you said was just so amazing. They never actually reference any of the points they made though. They just want the virtue points for being like affirming. They want to get to the affirming part, and then they want all the attention on themselves. So I completely agree. Bree, thank you for the super chat. There are free market alternatives to ACA that we talked about for a long time, and Republicans in Congress said they had a plan and needed a majority in the presidency, but they dropped the ball, the whole thing with John McCain. Yeah, Bree, but like, you got to understand, my perception as someone, again, who at that time was like on Obamacare, was like, the Republicans were telling me that they didn't have a plan, and I would know their plan after they repealed my health care. So I mean, what you're saying may very well be true. The problem was that they did not do a good job of communicating with people, because the fact is that a lot of people on Obamacare don't like Obamacare at all. Not at all. But if you say, I'm going to take away your health insurance and you just have to trust me, that's not an appealing alternative, and that freaked a lot of people out. And there are good things about Obamacare, like the getting rid of pre-existing conditions. That was a really good thing that legitimately needed to happen. That was a good thing. And so if you don't come to the table with a plan and you just say, "Trust us, bro, it's going to be better. We know you don't like Obamacare and we're going to do something really great," but then you don't tell them what that thing is, then that is your failure as a leader. You haven't communicated. And the right did not communicate. And so it's kind of like play stupid games, win stupid prizes. There are very specific like change management things that need to happen to bring the public along with you. And one of them is like, I'm not just going to like take away your healthcare without providing an alternative.
So, I mean, again, this is a conversation that should not stop here, but I do want to ask, one of the reasons I was so excited about bringing this group of scholars together was to think about engaging with communities outside of the academy. And that's something that we've already touched on. And I think personally, as someone who is, a grad student, is kind of in a precarious position in the academy, I feel like we're always kind of discouraged from doing too much activist work because it doesn't count for tenure or whatever, which of course is part of the neoliberal structure of the academy, is thinking like only certain products count for productivity or count for whatever.
This person is upset that they aren't letting them do activist work to count towards faculty tenure. Can we just talk about how fucked up that mindset is for a minute? Like, you won't give me tenure because I'm spending all my time being an activist instead of like doing things like teaching students and publishing papers and conducting research, which is what I'm supposed to be doing. But no, no, no. It is your neoliberal sensibilities that prevent you from giving me tenure, even though all I do all day is talk on Twitter and complain about the fact that my university won't give me tenure for being an activist. Exactly right. It's like a sense of entitlement. And then if the whole process doesn't change around just to suit their fragile sensibilities, they go, you are the neoliberal establishment that just doesn't understand, that's trying to keep us all down. And I should be able to be an activist because I went to graduate. They're basically just like influencers. I went to graduate school just to be an activist. I didn't want to be a professor. I wanted to be an activist. And I thought that they were the same thing because that was what my sociology professor in undergrad taught me, is that all professors are activists. Okay, I may have exaggerated some of that, but that was basically what they said, right? Basically.
And I'd love to talk a little bit about how to kind of push back against that and use our roles as academics to build more community power. I loved, I think it was a Key, I forget, or Blue, I forget who, talked about funneling university resources into the community. I personally have, maybe I should not be admitting this on camera, but I personally have like tried to do that. And that's one way that I love, one strategy that I love to like think about is like,
Oh,
what can we do to use?
oh. So you admit you tried to steal university resources to do activism? Is that what we just heard live on the internet? Is that what we just heard? Isn't that interesting? Huh.
Use our positions to
Exactly. It's kind of what it sounded like,
move these
VT Numb. Kind of sounded like that, didn't it?
Justice and liberatory movements forward.
I'm just gonna jump in and say the way to do it is to just do it, because it is a scam. I understand that I'm not a graduate student, and I know that there are graduate students on the call as well as on the panel, Eri, but I'm not being facetious when I say this, right? At UCLA, I was an assistant professor, and if I did not quit or work in another place, I'd be going up for tenure now. And as an assistant professor, they told me the exact same thing, right? Like, well, but it's not going to count. And you have to make decisions. I'm fully aware that this is being recorded, but I don't even go here, so try something, right? Like it actually doesn't matter. I really want us to, those who can hear my voice or like catch this recording, to really think about what it might mean for us to dig deep and have a real conversation about positionality. I'm saying this coming from like a Black feminist epistemology and perspective. Our standpoints, right? Our moving points, because some of us are more precarious than others, but it's whatever's the reverse of a rat race to then say, well, I'm precarious and therefore, right? Like, Eri, you're a graduate student, you're at Northwestern though, right? That like some of us are faculty, but there are more people who are considered faculty, who are contingent, adjunct, almost indentured, more than I would be as a tenure track assistant professor at UCLA, right? So it was really important for me to actually name this and know this for myself and recognize the position that I was cast in relation to, what it meant.
Being an adjunct does suck. They're right about that. Brooklyn Ways, thank you for the super chat. These are the Ivy Tower activist foot soldiers, non-profs, NGOs hired to go out as experts to propagandize in schools, #glisten. Kay Yang talks about it. I'll have to catch that with Kay Yang. Thank you for that. And by the way, guys, glisten, that spy stream we did last night, the person that was presenting it, Dylan, is associated with glisten. Glisten is bad news. If you see Glisten show up at your kid's school, you go make a fuss. And I'm not joking about that. Glisten is gender ideology on effing steroids. And we saw that last night. All right, guys, please mount that like button. You are watching Happy Hour. Let's continue.
To be just by rote of a position, like hoisted into the middle class, not just the middle class, but the US middle class. I mean, I got a therapist, so it was like sorted, but you know, it meant a lot for me coming from rural Caribbean, Central American upbringing to realize, well, I'm in this place and what does it mean? What should I do? But can I do that? And that's what the lack of a class consciousness across Turtle Islands has done to us, right? Blue already sort of opened the door by having us, by naming labor Blue, but I just, as an extension of that, I think the related absence of a class and racial consciousness across Turtle Island is an issue when faculty then get cast into the role of managers and graduate students are then our workers, and we need to then hold the disciplinary line in the service of the institution and the administration. And so we can also just decide to have that not be the case. It is obviously, you know, like with any kind of movement towards solidarity, there are pain points. It's difficult. I'm not, again, being facetious and like, just do it. But if you don't just do it, like hashtag Nike, then what are we going to do? Just sort of navel gaze and have a conversation until the cows come home? That does not work. That is ineffective. And that is sort of a waste of the awareness of our positions. And so I really wanted to I don't know if that's like too much, but I think it's something that is absolutely important, because
yes,
of course,
I saw it,
right,
Brooklyn
Ari,
Way,
of
thank
course,
you.
what we are going to do is steal back the resources of the university. I'm keep talking about UCLA because I just moved from there and those are the numbers that I know, but I look forward to learning more about U of T's numbers so I can read them for filth. But UCLA at the time that George Floyd was murdered had recently ended a fundraiser where they made $5.5 billion. That's billion with a B, right? And that was also, you know, in the wake of the COLA strike that led to the formation of what is now the Cops Off Campus movement that spread across Turtle Island, where students, specifically at my alma mater, UC Santa Cruz, were asking for a cost of living adjustment of $1,412 a month. Right. Instead, the University of California gave $375,000 to police externally to come and repress that labor struggle, which is also asking for the abolition of police on campuses. So these things are already taking place. People are already taking risks because for some of us, it is a risk to live. And so I think
it's
when
a risk
we think
to live.
about the bigger picture,
You're taking a risk to live.
Like no choice, right? In this way.
It's a risk to live. You are stunning and brave, sweetheart, just for being born. A stunning and brave act. My God, these people are such princesses. All of them. And I'm using princess as a non-gendered term of to mean because we need to be clear about our definitions. I'm using princess as a non-gendered term to mean soft, to mean weak, to mean unable to. Marshmallows. Thank you, Gayla. That's perfect. Marshmallows. Exactly. And you can be any color and be a marshmallow. It doesn't have to be, it's not about the color of the marshmallow. It is about the consistency of the marshmallow. Born soft. Fucking life is a risk. Come on.
And maybe I am being a non-binary person who is super down for binaries because you're either with it or you're not. It doesn't really behoove us to then say, well, but as a single mom with this and this and this, yes, get somebody to help you watch those kids, get somebody to draw in community, solicit resources on a local level and make the pressure sort of more diffuse and distributed so that we can all be in a movement against the state, against various institutions together, rather than sort of use that fear for tenure, for XYZ institutionalized thing to sort of like pin us down to a position that is actually undermining our communities in the long run.
Yeah, just a moment, appreciation. So there have been some studies that look at faculty and sort of talking about like organizing work. And basically what people have found is like, oh, first graduate students will say, well, I'm just going to keep my head down because I need to become faculty. And then at faculty levels, and it's like, I'm going to keep my head down until I get tenure. And then once it's like tenure, it's like, oh, I need to keep my head down so that, you know, I just get through whatever the next milestone is, right? So this, I think the discussion around like when is going to be the time, I think SA has it right on point that like the time is now. I also want to name sort of two other things that come out of what, at least what I'm hearing from SA, which is the first is that people are often stopped by shame. People are like, oh no, I have this position of power. And again, like a Black feminist epistemology is not going to say like, oh, get lost in feeling shame about that. It means you have resources, you have money, you have things. It's about how you use them in order to create a liberatory space, right? And a lot of sociologists, a lot of Black feminists, scholars more broadly, have argued that shame is not a helpful sort of spiral to get into when we're talking about doing organizing work, right? In fact, shame is often attached to positions of power where you know, shame helps to keep things like whiteness and toxic masculinity sort of centered, right? Because then you're still making it about yourself. And that's not helpful, right? So really the question is, particularly from a Black feminist perspective, is like, well, what is your point of leverage? What do you uniquely have that enables you to do the work that needs to be done? And the other part, and I think that this is tied to both abolition more broadly, to police abolition. I worked with Disarm UC and other abolition groups leading up to COLA, working on getting police and sort of disarm and defund movements around George Floyd. The issue was always one that was framed as scarcity, right? There's never enough resources to go around. And so that sort of scarcity, that austerity is what promotes the, well, now I've gotten mine and I need to keep it. I'm scared of losing it instead of making it available for more people, right? And so really part of what we're also combating is, again, that labor perspective of like capitalism's call to austerity, that there's never going to be enough for everyone, and therefore we all have to duke it
What are you
out
talking
for
about?
scraps.
That's not even what capitalism means. In a capitalist system, there can absolutely be enough for everyone. This is one of the arguments I was having the other day with the socialists in that other chat, because they were like, capitalism is evil. And I was like, why don't you just go start a business of your own? They're like, I don't have the money to start a business. And I was like, you can start a business right now using free tools online. And that's true, by the way. Every single person watching this can start their own business right now using free or extremely inexpensive tools that you can find online. You can find free or extremely inexpensive tools to do almost everything. I'm not saying you use those tools forever, but to get your business started, to just get things off the ground, you absolutely can do it with free or inexpensive tools online right now. And they were like, why would I want to be a capitalist? I don't want to be rich. I was like, but you can have more than enough. It's just, yeah, exactly, Brian. It's just about being lazy. The fact of the matter is that we have more than enough in this world for everyone. There is more than enough. But if you're just sitting around on your couch all day, or pontificating, waxing philosophical on the internet without actually doing anything. You're not creating anything of value to give the world. You're not building anything of value. Then no, you're not going to get value in return. Getting paid is a value exchange. You give something to the world that is valuable. They give you money in return, which is also of value. But there's more than enough money in the world for everyone. There's more than enough clients for everyone. There's more than enough opportunity for everyone. You can create whatever opportunity you want. And all of that exists under capitalism. I wouldn't be able to pursue the career I want to pursue under socialism. I bet most of you won't either. So don't tell me it's a mindset of scarcity. These people have the mindset of scarcity.
Right? Instead of recognizing, as SA pointed out, things like the beautiful abundance that can happen when we look at class consciousness and recognize where we are positioned. And so I think, again, just something that this made me think of is participating in protests at UC Davis, which is where I was. We shut down Milo Yiannopoulos when he was first doing his sort of tours through UC campuses. And one of the internal organizing things that I found so fascinating was that it was Black and brown folks who were putting themselves on the line to face down police and to basically shut it down. And at first there were lots of white participants who were like, yes, I also will help. But they were shedding as we got closer to the organizing, right? And I noted this in our organizing space, and people were like, that's not very intersectional of you. Like, you're not taking into account that we have other forms of oppression and that we're also being held down. And I was like, one, intersectionality is always race, boo-boo. You don't get to take race out. But also this, again, question
You don't get to dictate the rules of the game, boo-boo.
There's always going to be a reason to say, well, I'm in a precarious position, so I don't want to put myself on the line, right? And the fact is that we don't.
Of course they admit it.
We don't have the luxury to opt out.
This person's going to cry. They're going to cry
because
at any
no matter
moment.
what, we reap the benefits or we see the negative consequences
I
of these
could
systems
literally
as they come to
die.
pass, right? And so I just want to note that this idea of sort of, I'll do it when I'm not oppressed, that's not the kind of organizing space. We don't need to wait until we're not oppressed to do the work of abolition, right? It's about creating the world that we want to see.
So many things, so many great things. Okay, so the first thing I want to say was thinking about Blue mentioned the undercommons earlier, and I always I think it's such an important text, particularly for educators to think about, and the only relationship to have with the university is a criminal one, right? It's this idea of, I mean, for me as a new faculty member, that has been my compass of kind of being I'm not trying to magically transform the University of Toronto. It's not going to happen. What I'm trying to do is figure out how to take this research money and basically give it to Black trans people, and figure out ways in which I can create spaces through those resources to help people get their needs met and help people build relationships, right? And so I think as an education scholar, I have seen a lot of my classmates really struggle with that text, because the field of education largely tends to be white women, much like social work, much like these other kind of feminized
the white
helping
women,
labor,
the white
right?
women ruin everything.
And I've really seen people struggle with what does it mean to climb this ladder and not reap the benefits, like you're saying, right? And I worked so hard, I did so many things, and it fell short. And there's this embedded part of the academy that is just like this like failure, right? Like there are so many brilliant, amazing people who are trying to, you know, put work into the world, and part of being an academic is just being told no all the time, right? And like figuring out how to keep going regardless. And I think, you know, this point that I really appreciated both of you mentioned was thinking about like what happens when we don't have an analysis of racial capitalism. And something that I
Well, he
which
didn't
I
go to the
saw like kind
socialism
of echo
conference.
during the uprisings.
If he had watched, oh, I'm sorry, they, if they had watched the socialism conference like we watched the socialism conference, he would absolutely have a model of racial capitalism, because there was literally a presentation at the socialism conference called Racial Capitalism. We're better socialists than these people are, guys. Mount that like button if you are proud of your far superior socialism knowledge than the people we're hearing from right now.
Was suddenly after George Floyd's murder, suddenly Black organizing got this huge influx of money, like huge millions of dollars, right? To orgs all over the country who are trying to do abolitionist work. And it caused so many ruptures and fissures in those localized contexts. Part of it was because there's this scarcity mentality, right? Of this like,
well, you know,
hop off that money,
you
just
had
need
a
to
rough
give it to
night.
people, right? And some of it was like, okay, but what are the resources we need to actually like create the campaigns that we need to like basically get rid of the police? So in Minneapolis, one of the things that was happening post uprising is that organizers were working to get a question on the ballot if the city of Minneapolis wanted to get rid of the Minneapolis Police Department and replace it with the Department of Public Safety that was going to think about mental health resources, you know, have different people kind of react to like non-emergencies, like all these different kinds of things. And a little brain fuzzy, so bear with me, but I think the electoral board around the election is not elected, they're appointed by the mayor, right? And so basically the electoral board was like, we're not going to let you put this question on the ballot. We're not even going to let people consider this, right? And they got a lawyer. And so part of the organizing, they had to use those funds to figure out how do we fight this thing in court so we can get what we said that we would want the people to decide.
Hang on, I got a super chat coming in. Oh my gosh, I've got too many screens on my window. Hey, there we go. Michael Rogers, thank you. He, not they. Sorry, not sorry. Listen, man, I try to respect the pronouns. You guys know I believe that basic respect and courtesy is necessary to give to other people if you want them to give basic respect and courtesy to you. And it's also just like, I have my name mispronounced every single day of my life, and I don't really like it. I understand most of the time people are doing it like on accident. They don't mean to, but it's really annoying. And so if the only thing that I need to do for someone is to like use their pronouns, unless I feel like they're trying to take power over me, I'll generally do it. I know people disagree with me on this point. I do, but I feel it feels extremely uncomfortable to me to purposefully address someone as something they don't want to be called. That feels it feels icky to me, and I don't like it. But you're welcome to do whatever you want. All right, guys, we have about 13 minutes left of this presentation, so it looks like it's only going to be a one beer kind of day for me. Mount that like button if you're enjoying yourself. Thank you for attending Happy Hour. Let's wrap up.
That what we're going to do with the police in this city, right? And fighting for that takes resources, right? But when you had a bunch of people, right, it was the beginning of the pandemic, people lost their jobs, people were struggling to get food, all these things. It became this tension about what our priorities are, right? And some of that, and it got me really questioning, like, if we had an analysis of racial capitalism in our movements, how would that determine how we decided to deal with those resources, right? Like, how would that shift how we might be able to do something? And so that has just got me curious about, like, that's also part of the curiosity about, like, how are people learning about abolition? What are the things people being told about abolition, what it is and what it isn't, right? And like Essay said, the answer is still no, we don't want cops. That's very clear. And how do we nuance the ways in which we're asking those questions and thinking about community safety. In my own background, I came from like a healing justice background and thinking about what are the kind of like the backstage people of movement, right? Who are making sure that people are fed, making sure that people are getting medicine, making sure that people are getting care for their kids, things like that, right? How are people making sure that we're centering our healing in all of this? And I think that we need to continue to center those things because I think that's what helps us realize that our relationships are our biggest currency, right? That's the thing that's going to help us survive. And the last point I'll say about that is I'm thinking about Ruthie Gilmore, and she said that racial capitalism, along with the prison industrial complex, are technologies of anti-relationality, right? They are teaching us constantly to prioritize individualism in service of capitalist accumulation, right? And so if we are thinking about, if the prison is a technology of anti-relationality, how do we use indigenous ways of knowing, Black ways of knowing, relational-based ways of knowing to create spaces and build relationships where the priority are our relationships, right? Rather than the priority is, you know, especially in the academy, it's like, oh, we're encouraged not to collaborate, but if we do, it's
Hang on, got another super chat. Michael says, absolutely fair, but they're hijacking language, which is the issue. Well, I understand they're hijacking language. I explain how they're hijacking language all the time. But I also think, and while let me finish reading the super chat, the Brit Awards have been criticized for the non-binary cat being blokes. Yeah, I understand this point. I do, but at the same time, I'm not going to have my speech compelled by people who are reactionary on the other side, who go around screaming groomer, 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 groomer anytime someone disagrees with them. And I'm not suggesting that you're doing that, Michael. I don't think you're doing that at all. I don't think anyone in the chat is doing that. But like, there's a lot of reactionaries on the other side that will like really get in your face and shout at you and try to pressure you into doing what they want to do too. And so this is a place where I've come out as where I'm comfortable. I will use someone's pronouns unless I have a very specific reason not to. Now, I fuck it up all the time. I'm horrible at the they, them bullshit. I am. But again, for me, this is an issue of basic respect and courtesy. If we ever want to have any hope of waking people up, then you can't be adversarial like all the time. And one of our primary goals has got to be waking people up. And if the one and only thing that stands between you and waking the person you're talking to up is using their fucking pronouns to show them basic respect and courtesy, then I'm sorry, but that is a really easy price to pay. I have trans people in my community. I have non-binary people in my community. And they're just trying to live their lives. Most trans and non-binary people are just trying to live their lives. And guess what? They are allowed to live their lives in a way that they want to. They just want to be left alone, and they don't like the trans activism either. And every single time we are shitting on their wishes, we are pushing them to the trans activists. This is my position. People can disagree with me, and that's fine. But I feel like I point out their manipulations of language all the time. But I'm going to be respectful when someone asks to be called something because it makes their life better to be called it. And if they aren't trying to use it as some sort of power play over me, I think that's just where I leveled out. That's where I'm comfortable. Because I do want to wake people up. And I want to get people on our side. And I think that's important. Number 2, Kamala Harris said something communist again. Okay, well, must be a day that ends in Y. I literally just explained it. And if you are confused, then you need to rewind the video that you're watching and watch it again. It's about picking your battles. If you dig in your heels on every single point, you're going to lose. I would rather win and call someone they than lose and say, I will not give in to this absurd 87 gender identity bullshit. I would rather win And if you don't want to win, then I don't know what we're doing. I don't know what we're doing at all. If the goal is to just fight and 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 fight, I don't know what we're doing or what the point of any of this is.
Always for an output. It's always for a work, like, let's do this paper together, let's do this panel, right? As opposed to like, how do we actually spend time building relationships and seeing what our relationships bring to fruition, right? And that could be collaboration, but that could just be friendship, kinship.
Hang on, I got a couple more super chats. Sorry about, well, I appreciate the super chat, so I'm not sorry. Thank you guys for the support. Jen says, happy hour, Dr. K and everyone. Thank you, Jen. I appreciate it. Michael Rogers says, I can't believe you got a third super chat from me. Well, you know, I agree entirely with everything you just said. I guess the UK and US settings are further apart. Well, I think there's absolutely differences between the US and the UK. And again, like I am not going to tell people what to do. But I'm also not going to allow people to pressure me. Listen, like I can't tell you how much I got pressured in 2020 to say the right thing, the right talking points. And I went along with it for a long time because the goal in 2020 was to not get Biden elected, essentially. And we failed at that goal. Not for lack of trying. But like I had a different goal at that point, and I was silenced so much throughout that year. There were so many things I couldn't talk about. There were so many things I couldn't say because I was like, the goal is more important. The goal is more important. You don't need to have this fight right now. The goal is more important. And for me, and this is a me thing. This is not a chat thing. This is for me. I was silenced a lot throughout my childhood, and I really resent it. And that's part of the reason why I talk so much today. And so, like, I don't like being told what I can and cannot say. And everyone is allowed to make their own decisions about the pronoun issue. But I just don't want to be pressured into saying something that does not feel right to me, because at the end of the day, I'm the one that has to live with the consequences of that. And I so regret what I did in 2020. Maybe I'm working through some feelings. I so regret it. Hindsight is 2020, I suppose. All right, guys, we got about 14 more minutes of this presentation. Let's wrap up.
I know that as a Black trans person, I always want to be in kinship with other Black trans people, right? And being, you know, I'm in a new country, and I basically am like, how do I find my people, right? Like, that is huge. And I think that has been...
Oh, gosh. Brian says, Rachel Dolezal got crap for being transracial, but Blue is celebrated. Make it make sense. Are we sure Blue is transracial? I feel so bad for Rachel Dolezal. I've thought on occasion about reaching out to Rachel Dolezal to try to like interview her. I legitimately think her art is really good. I think I've talked about this before. Rachel Dolezal is a legit artist. Her paintings are really good. And I feel like she was treated so badly compared to what's going on in culture now. Now, don't get me wrong. I think Rachel Dolezal's a little weird, but like I'm a little weird too. I think her ideas are weird, but she likes what she likes. And isn't the whole thing supposed to be that we're supposed to like what we like? Are you not listening to a single word that I've said? I think you need to rewind the video and listen to it again, because I've literally addressed that question.
A pillar in my abolitionist work that I think is like the not so fun stuff, because like relationship takes work, right? Relationship takes, you know, some of my background is also doing community accountability work. And now, like, you know, 10 years ago, I was like, yes. And now I'm like, the way that people talk about accountability is like devoid of relationship. Like, we're gonna hold you accountable. We're gonna hold this institution accountable. And that's not how that works. You know, like
Oh my
accountability
gosh,
requires
Michael.
relationship.
Michael, a record 4th super chat. She does. She legitimately does do good art. Hang on. Let me show you guys Rachel Dolezal's art real quick. I know we're wrapping up, but someone, Brooklyn sent the link. And so let me just show you Rachel Dolezal's art real quick, because she does legitimately do good art. And then we will get to Michael's super chat and then we'll wrap up. Like, her work is beautiful. It really is. It's really, really good. It's good. She paints these. Like, look at that. That's so cool. I mean, I don't love all of them, but I mean, she has got talent, yo. I love it. I think it's really good. And maybe that's just me, but like I look at a lot of art because art is kind of like one of my kind of like guilty pleasures. I love it. I'm not like an expert or anything, but I just really like it and I own way too much of it. I think she's very, very talented. Michael says, pint for you and Victor. Really enjoyed the stream. You don't need to read this one, but love from Dystopia England. Well, I read it anyway, Michael. You sent it in, and I do appreciate the support. Thank you so much. Cheers to you. That'll go to the beer fund. And then Jen says, Dr. K, did you see that story about limited run games and the trans activist who got the lady fired from a tweet in 2016? Jen, I feel like I heard about this, but I didn't look into it that far because I was just really busy. But I feel like I feel like maybe even you messaged me about this. I feel like I did hear about it, but I have not looked into it with any depth. All right, let's wrap up. For real this time.
Right. It requires that you're in relationship with people. And the thing is when conflict comes, it gets messy and you have to figure out how to lean on your relationship to get through that. And that's a skill set that we don't always have. And so if we're not building this on a very ground level of how to be in relationship to each other, how to share resources in this way, how are we going to take down these bigger structures if we're not able to like get our needs met down here? So I do think that this idea of like leveraging our power to center relationships, I think is has to be at the root of all our work, no matter what direction it takes.
I just dropped in the chat for folks, Bay Area Transformative Justice Collective. They do pretty amazing work.
God.
And
That
they've got
sounds
a
like
whole
a
list of
dystopian
resources.
nightmare.
So just to sort of play off of or to add to this, right? Talking about accountability, talking about justice, talking about relationships. Folks are doing that work and they've compiled stuff.
I
so
own a
you don't
couple.
have to reinvent the
One or
wheel,
two.
right? It doesn't have to be starting from scratch. How do I think about relationality? It can be doing things like doing a pod mapping exercise. Like, who are the people I'm accountable to? And who is accountable to me, right? Just as a sort of practical resource guide.
Thank you, Jennifer.
And thank you for mentioning that, because one of the other things that came up in that panel, that reproductive rights panel, was thinking about now as you know, trans rights particularly are being gutted in all these places. How do we use this model of like pods to think about how to keep each other safe? I know that I leaned on the pod situation to get through COVID, right? Like, who am I, you know, thank God for being like a queer who's done poly for a long time, because I was like, great, we're doing negotiations, we're figuring out who's the pods, right? Like, I'm comfortable having these conversations where I, you know, in community, you know, in extended community with people who really were struggling because they didn't know how to have a collectively kind of like minded approach to getting through this really hard time, right? And so we can think about what are their pods to get through COVID. We're going to have another surge. There's like 4 respiratory things happening at the same time, right? But also, like, as our rights are getting gutted and things, and it becomes more precarious in our everyday lives, how do we create these pods to figure out how to get our needs met, how to make sure we're getting food, getting meds, things like that? So there's, I think sometimes people take these tools and they're like, we have to use them exactly how they were created. And it's like, no, like part of that is adapting, like that pod, you know, situation is an adaptation of other things. So how do we adapt it to kind of fit our needs?
And Essay, if you want to go, I just wanted to sort of add that one of the other things I think both with the Academy and beyond is about skill building. So also transferring skills that are kept in reserve, that are hoarded in the university, and really talking about empowering community members to use those skills on their own autonomously is, I think, really important. So for example, some of the work that I've done around the 1033 program, that's like FOIA, Freedom of Information Act requests. It was CIPRA, the California Public Records Act, right? In North Carolina, it's the North Carolina Public Records Law. Letting people know how to make those requests so that they can actually engage in knowing what's going on in their city, in their community, because a big part of how a lot of, say, police violence and other forms of violence operate is by staying being obfuscated by bureaucratic hurdles, right? Bureaucratic hurdles that the Academy aids in, and that also we have tools to navigate. So what does it look like to aid in skill building? And not just skill building in the university, but doing things like pods, right? That is also skill building. So it is both, yes, about relationships and relationality. But again, if we don't have to reinvent the wheel, but we can modify it, right? And so I also want to emphasize in our conversation today that this isn't necessarily just abstract things about sort of trans abolition. Trans abolitionists have built the boring bones of things like a pod mapping sheet, right? Right, and those are things that people can utilize in order to build skills.
Yeah, I won't be too long, but Boo's last comments made me think about the name of the panel, where trans activism
Set
and
it up in
abolition
your
meet, and
Google
just,
account,
in case
Barb.
you needed an answer, it's like right in the middle, right? But we didn't really get to talk about it so much,
Or in
but
your
I wanted to
channel
sort of tease
account.
out the thread too, that even though, even if like all trans people may not name ourselves like abolitionists, at the core of trans embodiment and identity is the abolition of something, right? And that would be namely gender. Even if, I mean, I don't want, we're towards the end of this, so I don't want to like toss in my hot takes on the ridiculous discourses around like binary versus non-binary trans people, but thinking about an abolition of gender as we know it, let's say it this way, so that even if we're attached to certain iterations of gender
if you haven't watched Invasion of the
transness
Body Snatchers lately, you should. It's a good movie.
Relationship between an end to the structure of gender, which is also the state, which is also coloniality.
Oh my goodness, Kelly with a big super chat. Thank you, Kelly. In beginning, I feel like I was against pronoun thing because it felt keyword compelled that I was supposed to know their pronouns. I think TikTok has made people so defensive because so much of these videos are for shock and virality. I agree. And this is why, like, I don't go on TikTok. Like, I have a TikTok account, but I don't use it. Like, I post stuff to it every once in a while. If I'm posting like a YouTube short or something, I'll post it to TikTok too, just for shits and giggles. But I don't go on TikTok. I don't use TikTok. I strongly recommend people stay the F off TikTok. I really think it gives a very distorted view of reality. And this is honestly part of the problem that I have with libs of TikTok. And I think what libs of TikTok is doing is fine. Like, I don't have an issue with her as like a person. I understand why what she's doing is compelling, but and this is part of why we watch Happy Hour too. If you're taking these clips from TikTok and then presenting them as though they're real life, I think that fundamentally distorts what real life is. What people are doing on TikTok is not real life. What people are doing in Happy Hour is real life. This is really how these people think. This is how they talk. These are the ideas that they're implementing in the real world. Now, unfortunately, it takes 2 hours to sit down and watch Happy Hour, whereas it takes a minute to watch a TikTok. So the commitment to it is different. But when you watch it in its full form, you have a completely different understanding of what's going on in the world than if you just watch TikTok videos, because TikTok videos are not real. TikTok videos are designed to be as absurd and crazy as possible in order to go viral on the internet. I mean, I think Dylan Mulvaney is a theater kid. Dylan Mulvaney is doing performance art. He's doing theater. He's doing Broadway. And he knows it. It's so obvious he's doing Broadway. He's doing Broadway on TikTok. So, yeah.
Know it. So when we're thinking about ourselves, our bodies ourselves, too soon, it's really, I think, useful to sort of articulate ourselves in relation to the bigger picture. And I'm stammering because I don't want to like pull back, because Blue is very useful in like teaching us, you know, it's not to be so abstract, but it is about like getting in where you fit in, and even if that's on like the quote unquote ground floor, right? And so you know, when Key was also talking about, we've been talking about not knowing how to do community work, I think it's really useful to, you know, figure out where it is that you are in the moment, right? Like when you think about how do we get rid of police and you don't know your neighbor to the left or to the right, maybe one way to start getting rid of police is knocking on our door. If it doesn't feel, I mean, I'm saying this also as someone who is new to a new country again, and that is something that, and I'm just vaguely asocial, so I'm like, that's awkward, but I also know in the big picture, this is gonna be useful. So let me just, you see my face, I see your face, let's know at least who's just to your left and to your right. We can start here and we can sort of work our way out. And that can be metaphorical, maybe if not in your building, across the street, or in, you know, where you work, or if you have Trader Joe's, which I miss, you know, like wherever it is
Trader
that you
Joe's
are,
is legitimately pretty great.
to sort of figure out how to make those connections. I also wanted to, I'm just really mindful of time, but I also want to sort of get us to think about coloniality too is not something that is super abstract, because it is something that permeates our lived experiences all the time. It's not just we've talked about it, so this is just like really circling back to put a fine point on it. When we're talking about US imperialism, settler colonialism, and the broader sort of colonial forces, that for me is what is resonating most when Key is talking about like the anti-relationality of racial capitalism. And so I think it is like really imperative that we think about that in relation to our skill sets, because it is, and this is a dual hour, those of us who teach and work in relation to the academy sort of dole those things out, but also to acknowledge that people have skills, right? Something as banal as that. There are things that I learn specifically outside of the academy that keeps me able to live and struggle within and against it. And I think it would be really useful for us to sort of figure out what those things are. So maybe I'm not the one who is upfront doing extroversion work, as I'm not extroverted to like be out there and be like, can you, I don't know, join or talk to me, make eye contact, like weird stuff like that. But I will hold your baby, right? I love to cook. I like know my role, right? Like I know what it is that I can do and what I can offer to broader movements, right? I speak languages. Can I translate? Can I communicate? Can I get your abuela on the phone and like bring her rounds because she can make arepas for us? Like what is it that we can offer to not just the movement TM, right? But
all right, guys, I'll get the super chats at the end. Thank you for those.
Thinking about transness, I think, is precisely the road to doing that. Even if, you know, there, I don't know, for the 3 people who may not be trans on the call, right? Like, it's really important to think of the interstitial relationship of trans identity, to think about already what that work does to unsettle and sort of like dwell in that unsettlement, right? Because it also itself is, I think, a pedagogical tool, right? Transness, just to like bring us back to that place. Transness and its unsettled relationship to gender, to race, to all of the things that we've been talking about, some of us, again, dwell in that space, right? And negotiate that space, find relation, find love, find joy in that space, resist in that space. And I think rather than that additive model that Blue was talking about intersectionality, such that like white trans people are trans and not white somehow, we can actually think about the unsettled relationship of these interstitial identity points and figure out how or whether we want to sort of collectively dive in to that trouble, as opposed to sort of being unilaterally or individually comfortable.
Thank you all so much. We are a little bit over time, unfortunately, because of scheduling conflicts. We only had an hour to do this, although this conversation, I feel like, could go on for another 2 or even 3 hours. But I don't want to hold people longer than the schedule. Do you all want to share, like, maybe in the chat, if you're open to having people contact?
No, I don't think we need to listen to their little wrap up. What I will say, guys, is what I would love as we kind of wrap up on our stream, I would love everyone to head over to Karlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. You can also get there by going to activelyunwoke.com/substack just to make it a little bit easier. And I would love for everyone to subscribe. And if you can sign up for $5 a month to support the work I'm doing on Substack, to include exposing last night's autistic sex education webinar, to include talking about how Democrats in New Hampshire are literally trying to legalize discrimination in New Hampshire right now, that it is actually in the bill. You can see the bill yourself. To include talking about the trans maxing manifesto. I am the only person that has done a deep dive into the trans maxing manifesto that I know of so far, and you can find that over on my Substack. To include the Woke Mind series, where I am breaking down the psychology of the woke left to be able to explain to you exactly why they do what they do and exactly what you can expect from them in any given circumstance. I post every single day on my Substack, pretty much, and you can always find it is I'm gonna just own it. I think I'm doing the most unique unwoke content on the internet right now about current events, about culture. What James Lindsay does with New Discourses is phenomenal. I'm not doing that. I'm doing something different. And I think it's good, and I think it's going to keep people informed about what's going on, and it's going to explain this culture war that we are all engaged in right now. But I need your support to be able to do it. I would like to get 100 new paid subscribers this month on my Substack. I'm on track to do it, but I do need your help. So head over there, subscribe. You can subscribe for free if you want, but please share the content out with your community. That would be really great. Kelly O'Daniel says, we also don't talk to each other anymore. I think that's a huge problem, Kelly. I really, really do. When we don't talk to each other, we dehumanize each other. And so I 100% agree. And then Jen says, I think neopronouns are for people who are just looking for a new yodel. Like that way, lay, he, a ho will be pronouns one day. Well, what makes you think they aren't already? I've been in the trans discords. I'm in the trans discords right now. I'm posing as a 15-year-old girl that's thinking about being non-binary. The lists of pronouns in the trans discords will blow your fucking mind. We're not talking about the they, them, theirs. We're not even talking about Zim and Zer. There are whole lists of pronouns in the trans discords. And I don't know that lay, he, ho are pronouns. I don't know it off the top of my head. I didn't memorize the list or anything. But they very well could be on the list right now, and I'm not. Bot can attest. Well, I think Bot left, but like if Bot was here, Bot could attest that I am not exaggerating on that at all. All right, guys, that is all we have for today. Thank you for coming to Happy Hour. And remember, if you want to get in on Bitchcraft, which we're doing tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern time, I'm looking forward to seeing my community members for Bitchcraft at 3 p.m. And then we are going to come and do Socialism Saturday at 6 p.m. right after it. But we're doing Bitchcraft tomorrow at 3 p.m. We are doing movie night on Sunday at 8 p.m. And if you want to get in on that action, head over to activelyunwoke.com/support and become a member of my locals or become a member of my Patreon, or you can sign up for that monthly subscription on my Actively Unwoke Substack. I will be sending out all of the links to the different things we're doing tomorrow so people have them. And if you're coming into the Discord for movie night, like please just like don't do it at the last minute, okay? You're like come into the Discord a little bit early because we need to verify you is the thing. So when you come into my supporter Discord, you have to go into the verification channel and tell us who you are and where you came from, because you don't just get access to the full Discord. We have that shit locked down because I have stalkers all over the internet. And so we have to verify you and then you're let in. So don't do it at 8 o'clock on Sunday. Come in before that, and that way you're going to be all set to go. And we're going to watch Equilibrium on Sunday at 8 p.m. and it's going to be great. But guys, for right now, I'm going to take my leave. I'm going to go see my husband, I'm pretty sure for the first time all week. Take care. Have a great rest of your day. And we'll see you for Bitchcraft tomorrow or for Socialism Saturday. Mount that like button on the way out the door if you haven't already. And we'll see you soon.